I just saw that
For a young
one
writer.
Duel, right? Spielberg's movie, that old movie, like from the
Right,
70s.
yeah, his first film.
That was so brilliant. And, I just saw it again. Have you ever seen it? It's so amazing. It's like, it's just about a guy on the road and some other freak that you never see in a truck wanting to kill him for no good reason. But it's so brilliant. And I thought, and the questions you were asking me, it's like, would a young filmmaker today have the courage to do a movie that's that untrendy? It was untrendy then, but back then there wasn't anything else to compel young filmmakers to go, oh, I got to do the trendy thing. Now Spielberg would still be, because he's like from outer space or something. He's just so, of his own making. But how many young filmmakers would have that courage to resist the temptation to follow the trend? And that's the danger. It's like hardly a danger, but I would say to any young artist, as seductive as it is to imitate, you will become very ordinary then.
Well, speaking of which, you talked about in the video that your father traveled all over the world for his job, and as a result, you were brought into just different countries, cultures, everything. What would you say to an artist who maybe stayed in the same town growing up, their parents are from that town, and that's fine, but maybe they weren't exposed to different ideas and people? What would you tell them to enrich their creativity?
Well, actually, you can see that from two sides, because I've met some friends, who never went anywhere, but just being very isolated, they became so sensitive to their every moment, to the environment, that they were trying to find that they became great artists just by the limitations,
the focus of their environment.
Yeah. And in a way, I was very dispersed. I never really could cultivate long-term relationships with anyone. I was always like jumping around from school to school. I always felt, like an outsider, which sort of made me afraid to deal with people. I became very often sort of like an observer who just see things from the outside, even from the surface at times. So there's two sides to looking at it. On one hand, I felt like the world was one, we're all one, we're all united. I can see the very complexity of things. But on the other hand, I felt very often I missed that intimate deepness of being in the moment, So I think it's a balance, And but in a way, now that because we're so connected to the internet, in a way we are global, we're everywhere, anywhere. Anyway, so it's almost not necessary to go everywhere anymore, because we're reaching everyone and we're communicating with the whole world constantly. So we're global citizens now, just through the internet,
Right. Well, I had interviewed a lady, Carol Francis, who was she's an activist and a teacher and a filmmaker, and she loves the John Sayles quote, which I'm butchering here, but it's something like, filmmakers need to go out and get a life, so to speak, and then go and make their movie. So they go to film school, they're young, they're in school, they're around people their own age, but then they go and they try to make a movie about things that maybe they haven't experienced yet.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's the path of a lot of great writers, like if you look at a lot of famous writers, they had to slave away, like, Hemingway, whatever, go to war, really like struggle and
but that's his, in fact, to your question, Hemingway, he had an external life and he spoke of it. That was his voice, and back to Proust or Kafka, they didn't need an external world. And, plenty of artists, their brain and their sensitivity, their observance, that's where their art is, and others need a broader brushstroke, and the Kerouac thing, they need the big road, others need the smaller journey, but it's bigger emotionally, and to the Sayles quote, I understand it. When speaking of Duel, Steven, Spielberg was like 22, 23. There are geniuses that come around that have a lot to say early, and then there's a lot of people that want to be artists that have nothing to say early, you know, and then there's others that, you know, bloom later. It comes in every shape. I mean, there's not as many geniuses, and there's a whole bunch of people that went to the right schools, have the right friends, and say nothing, but the thing or the project or the painting or the concert gets presented. But the lasting ones, I mean, you know, it's just amazing to see this movie Duel after, I don't know, 40 years it is. It's like there's not a beat that feels old-fashioned, you know, because it's done with such pure intention all through it. It's not based on, well, you know, like a lot of times I'll have read a script that an older person will write, you know, about a young person, okay? And I'll get it to do a rewrite, or a friend will ask me to read it, you know. And, you know, they're writing about young 20-year-olds or high school. And the first mistake they all make is they just jam it full with, like, tech and blog and, you know, all this crap. And I'm like, who cares? Like, it's not going to be there in 4 minutes. And that is not what a character is, any more than, you know, when we were growing up, we weren't about stereos. I mean, stereos were part of our life, but it's you got to write, you know, people have an emotional core, and it just, that doesn't change according to trends.
And that's why I think this is, you know, our film is such a beautiful and powerful film, because it doesn't do that. It's such a simple, pure little story of emotion, you know, that it just bursts through all that, you know. I mean, sure, we will have some club scenes, you know, the girl is going to be trendy, she's a, you know, has a cool shaped head and whatever. There's a lot of trendiness in it, but the essence of it, the core of it,
that's
is just
background.
this,
That's background. Her environment.
You know, and I intend to shoot it in a very, you know, flashy way and very gritty, and use all the toys and gimmicks, you know, and all the cool stuff that we as filmmakers get to use these days. But the essence of it is just the purity of the emotion, you know, the truth.